I've lived off-grid for almost 2 years now. No power lines, no neighbors, no cell service, just a small cabin I built myself about 40 miles from the nearest town, deep in the woods. The only road that leads there is a narrow dirt trail that disappears under the trees after the first mile. Most people would probably hate it, but I loved the quiet. At least, I used to. Living off-grid means you get used to certain sounds. Wind moving through trees, branches cracking in the distance, animals moving around at night. After a while, your brain learns what each sound means. You know when it's a deer, you know when it's a raccoon, you know when it's just a house settling in the cold. But 3 weeks ago, I started hearing a sound that didn't belong to any of those things. Footsteps. Human footsteps. The first time I heard them was around midnight. I had just finished loading wood into the stove and was sitting at the small table in the cabin with a lantern on. Outside the windows, everything was pitch black. Then I heard it. Crunch, crunch. Slow footsteps in the gravel outside the cabin. I froze. Nobody should have been out there. The nearest person lives over 20 miles away, and no one even knows exactly where my cabin is. The footsteps moved slowly across the front of the house. Crunch, crunch, like someone walking past the windows. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped toward the door. "Hello?" I called. The footsteps stopped immediately. Silence. Just the wind in the trees again. I opened the door and shined the flashlight outside. Nothing. The beam swept across the clearing. Empty. The woods stood still and dark beyond the edge of the light. I stayed outside for a few minutes, listening. Nothing moved. Eventually, I told myself it was probably a deer walking through the gravel. Animals can sound surprisingly human when they step on rocks. So I went back inside and locked the door. But the next night, it happened again. Same time. Midnight. Footsteps outside the cabin. This time, they moved slower, like whoever was out there was pacing back and forth in front of the windows. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I didn't open the door that night. I just sat there listening. The footsteps circled the cabin once, then stopped right outside the front door. For a long time, nothing happened. Then I heard something that made my stomach drop. A knock. 3 slow taps on the wood. Knock, knock, knock. Nobody should have been there. Nobody. I didn't respond. I didn't move. After about 30 seconds, the footsteps started again, walking away back toward the forest. The third night was when things got worse. Because the footsteps didn't stay outside, they started on the roof. I woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of something walking above my head. Slow. Heavy. Each step creaked through the wood beams. Step, 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 step. There is no ladder to my roof, no way to climb up there without making noise, and yet something was walking up there, directly above my bedroom. I grabbed my rifle and stepped outside. The cold night air hit my face. As I moved into the clearing, I shined my flashlight onto the roof. Nothing. Empty. But the footsteps stopped the moment I stepped outside. Like whatever was up there knew I was looking. I stood there for several minutes, scanning the roof and the tree line. The forest was completely still. Then I noticed something that made my skin crawl. There were footprints in the dirt near my cabin. Bare footprints. Human, but they were wrong. Too long, too thin, like someone had stretched a normal foot. And they circled the entire coven over and over, like something had been walking around the house all night. I didn't sleep much after that. The fourth night, I stayed awake with the lantern on and my rifle beside me. Midnight came. Then 1 a.m. Nothing happened. Around 2 a.m., I started thinking maybe it had finally stopped. Then I heard something right outside the window next to my chair. Breathing. Slow, heavy breathing, right on the other side of the glass. I slowly turned my head. The lantern light barely reached the window. Outside was just darkness, but the breathing continued. Then something touched the glass. I heard fingers slide slowly across it, like someone feeling the surface. I stood up and raised the lantern. For a moment, the window reflected my own face back at me, and behind that reflection, I thought I saw something move. Something tall, standing just beyond the light. The breathing stopped. Then a voice came from outside, soft, almost curious. "Hello?" My heart started pounding because I hadn't spoken out loud all night, but the voice sounded exactly like mine. Same tone, same accent, like a recording of my own voice coming from the woods. Then it said something else. "Hello? Is anyone home?" The exact words I had shouted 2 nights earlier when I first heard the footsteps. Something out there had heard me, and it had learned how I sound. The breathing returned, closer now, right against the window. Then the voice whispered again, "My cabin." Those were the words I say sometimes when I pull into the clearing after being away. I never told anyone that, but something in the woods had heard me say it, and now it was repeating it, slowly practicing. My cabin. I backed away from the window and grabbed my rifle. The breathing stopped again. For a few seconds, the forest went completely silent. Then something moved in the trees. Branches cracked, leaves rustled, and whatever it was started walking away. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Back into the forest. I stayed awake until sunrise. The next morning, I checked the ground around the cabin. The footprints were back, bare, too long, too thin, and they led into the woods behind the house. But they didn't stop there. They circled something first, my truck. Over and over, like whatever made them had been studying it, walking around it, trying to understand it. I left that morning and drove into town. I haven't gone back since. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm trying to sleep, I still hear something in my head, a voice in the darkness, practicing, learning, repeating the same words over and over. My cabin, my cabin, my cabin.